Speaking of Florida grown, it's my honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Chris Beytes. Chris is the editor of GrowerTalks and Green Profit magazines, and the author of the widely read e-newsletter Acres Online, with a circulation of over 23,000 people in 66 countries. Chris is a graduate of the University of Florida with a degree in ornamental horticulture and a minor in journalism. A former greenhouse owner with his wife Lori, Chris has been with Ball Publishing since 1993. In that position, he travels the U.S. and the world to stay current on the latest horticultural production technologies, marketing, and retail trends. Highlights of his career so far includes interviewing King Alexander of the Netherlands and emceeing 5 times the International Grower of the Year Awards in Germany. Another bit to brag about, he's the only man I know who has his own bobblehead. Chris has joined us today to expand our horizons and share his thoughts on the most puzzling part of the horticulture business, the consumer. I look forward to learning about new buying patterns and what will motivate consumers to spend their money this spring and summer. Chris Beytes, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, hey there, Bob. Yeah, how's it going? What I'm doing right now is showing you that you can actually get functional with your face masks, something I've decided to do. Oh, there we go. And, if you could do a little welding and do some social distancing, why not? Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. I would much rather be in Florida, though. I am a Floridian, but I've been in Chicagoland for 27 years, so my blood is pretty thick for this cold weather. But I really wish I could have been down there with you guys doing this live. But, hey, this is the next best thing. So let's sort of dive into it now. Let me get my presentation fired up here. Normally, this kind of talk, well, it's always fun to do, but to be asked about giving an insight into consumers in a time like this, an unprecedented time in history, no small task. And I do not own a crystal ball, but I'm going to do the very best that I can. Now, I won't waste too much time. Oh, by the way, happy Free Cone Day, which is today. I believe it's the first Tuesday in May every year, except this year, because of the whole social distancing thing. So we don't get a free cone today, but otherwise next year, go for it. Actually, I heard there was sort of a riot in an ice cream shop in Cape Cod over the weekend that opened up, and people were so desperate to get in there and have ice cream, they basically had to shut the place down because it was pure mayhem. So maybe have your ice cream at home. Bob mentioned GrowerTalks magazine. I've been editor of GrowerTalks since 1993. And under normal circumstances, that lets me travel the world. I haven't been anywhere lately, but I've been online almost constantly talking to people. And some of that will come out in my presentation today. And my newsletter, if you don't get it, you can go to GrowerTalks.com and click on the newsletter section and subscribe. It's basically everything I'm hearing and seeing from around the U.S. and the world on an almost daily basis. And I send it out once a week and have since 2003, I believe. Somehow every week I get there's something to say. But what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to talk briefly about consumers in general. I mean, we could talk about consumers forever. There is no stopping, but I'll give you a few little nutshell things to think about. I'm going to talk about consumers during a pandemic. What have we learned in the last, say since late March when this thing started rolling out? What have we observed anyway? And what about consumers post-pandemic? Do I have any insights into that? I guess we'll find out. Why do I even take on the task of talking about consumers? It's a thankless task, I can tell you that, because consumers are pretty much crazy. You are consumers. I'm a consumer. And we don't know what we want today, let alone tomorrow or next year. But there's a few principles and things I've learned over my many years of doing this, especially in the last few years, is it doesn't really pay anymore to talk about demographics. That used to be the thing. You were the greatest generation. You were a baby boomer. You were Gen X, Gen Y, a millennial, Gen Z. We don't even know what's coming next. I'm probably the pandemic generation or something like that. The pans. But But more and more, we've seen, and demographers have seen, and social scientists have seen that people don't tend to think in terms of demographics. And I know that gardening does not happen in terms of demographics. Gardening happens by life stage. This group of folks here are not coming into your garden center or not partaking in your landscaping services, most likely. They might wander in with their mom or something, but they've got other interests right now. And can you get them to buy a houseplant this day and age with Pinterest? Absolutely. And that might plant the seed. Hopefully when they were in kindergarten, they planted a sunflower seed in a Dixie cup. And that's germinating. Now, I don't mean on the windowsill. I mean inside them. And they're going to remember that when it came up and how satisfying it was. And that's something we'll talk about, what kids are doing right now. We hope that lasts. These slightly older kids, young adults, again, the apartment, a few houseplants, but they're not big customers, but they could be eventually. Now you start raising a family. That's a little different. You're starting to think about settling down, nesting, creating a place to live, but your money is tied up, your time's tied up, you don't have disposable income, so you're probably not big gardening consumers then. But hey, once somebody's got a home and they're settling down and a landscape and a place to garden and multiple rooms for houseplants, that's when you can really assume that these people are right to be our customers. And that could be when you're 25. It could be when you're 45. It's not an age thing. It's a lifestyle thing. So always think in terms of lifestyle when you're dealing with consumers. And there are 80-year-olds who have the same interests as 15-year-olds in this day and age, and they operate together in tribes, as they say. But now there are exceptions. Many of us on this call are exceptions for one reason or another. We got addicted to plants earlier in life. We've got a massive collection of houseplants. You're seeing the stories like in the, say the New York Times or other mainstream publications talking about the houseplant trend, and it's real. I don't know yet if it's as big as the houseplant trend of the 70s. And my wife and I came into the industry kind of right at the tail end of that in 78, 79. It was just sort of on its way out, but you could still buy macrame. We did. And you can buy it again now. So there are exceptions to that. But as I said, you want to think in terms of like-minded people. That's really where the action is. So if you're planning events or sales or anything else, think in terms of what kind of minded people you want to attract to that event, that sale that you want to present to or what have you, instead of just thinking about things like how old are they going to be. They're going to be every age. They're going to be every sex, every color, every category you can think of. Now, during a pandemic, of course, those things don't change at all. Maybe in some ways they're amplified a little bit. All you have to do, since you really can't go anywhere, is to be online pursuing your interests. It might be plants, it might be macrame, it might be anything, but you're going to be hanging with your tribe online or binge watching the kinds of things you want to watch with your family that are different than what the next family wants to watch. So I think in some ways this tribalism is going to be accentuated a little bit, amplified a bit during this. But when it comes to our product specifically, that's what you want to hear about. There's some things driving consumers that I've witnessed the last 6 or 8 weeks, and the first one is boredom. There's nothing to do. You know, after the first week, you're tired of eating, you're tired of watching movies. And when garden centers were able to open up, it was kind of like, let's go to the garden center. You also spend a lot of time around your yard, and your house, and you're thinking, we need plants. This place is a dump. Fear is a big driving factor with our industry. I'll talk a little bit more about that. People are worried for a lot of reasons. They're worried about their job. They're worried about their health, first and foremost. This is a Home Depot line I got into a couple of weekends ago. I didn't want to stand in line for 20 minutes to get into Home Depot, but I wound up doing it, and I turned it into a photo op. And all we really wanted to do was go in the garden center and look around, but you weren't allowed into the garden center. because of fear. But it's also the reason so many people were going to the garden center, and that is the fear of not having food. We'll grow our own. That'll show them. This is a good one. This is one of the big positives, and that is kids are home with parents. Now, parents may not think it's a positive, and there are some horror stories you might hear about, parents who aren't good parents on a good day, maybe, not being the best parents under these bad situations. But the people I know have taken a lot of time to spend time with their kids, homeschooling, educating them. And I really think that getting outside and gardening has to become part of the curriculum for almost all of them, because eventually you run out of science experiments and art projects and things like that around the inside of the house. So hopefully there's been a lot of young kids gardening, getting introduced to gardening this year who might not have normally been introduced to that. So that's a real positive. And just the need to get outside. Now in Florida, where I grew up, you can go outside anytime. But up here in Chicagoland, when it kicked in, the pandemic kicked in, and the lockdown in sort of mid-March, the weather was just starting to break, and we were just like looking out the window. The trees are popping, my daffodils are coming up. It's beautiful, and man, we want to get outside. The weather's been up and down, but boy, those first warm days, got to get outside and garden. And I think more than ever, people have felt this urge to get out to nature. Biophilia, it's called, which is actually it's the idea that humans have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. And if my cat wanders in here, you'll see that happening right here. And her name is Daisy, by the way. Isn't that very horticultural? So I think this is something else that I hope is a lasting effect. This feeling of wanting to get in touch with nature. I hope it's not just something that's gonna, as soon as they can get back in the mall and the movie theater and the bar, that they forget about their gardening. But this is kind of the end result: is that people have gone crazy for our industry this spring, and I can statistically prove that. Is this slide? Here's my slide. Okay, so I do a weekly weekend survey, and I've done it for 10 or 11 years now, where every Monday I send an email out to all of my readers saying, how was your weekend in your wholesale business or your retail business? Anybody can reply on a scale of 1 to 10. How was your weekend? And I've been doing it long enough, and I generally get 100 or so, 100, maybe 125 answers from around the country. In this case, May 2nd and 3rd, I think I had 46 states and a good chunk of Canada up there. So good representation. And they tell me on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, this spring started out really, really slow. Like down in the 3s and 4s. The weather was bad. Then the pandemic came in, and I start asking in late March. So right around the beginning of the pandemic was when I started asking. So people were frightened. No garden centers were open, except in the South. And interestingly, the South and Southeast has been reporting good numbers all along. But it really started out slow and scary. But it started to build. And then the last week of April was really good. 7.8 in the US and 8.2 in Canada, and nearly a third of everybody who sent me a score sent me a perfect 10. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a good spring in spite of the pandemic. Then the first weekend in May hit. The national weather forecast for that 3-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of May, 1, 2, 3, was clear everywhere. A little bit of rain here and there across maybe the Southeast, but hardly any. And I thought this is going to be good. Well, when I started opening up my scores, they were through the roof. It was 10, 10, 10, 10 plus, 9.5, 15. And some of the words people sent me, these are direct quotes from growers and retailers out there in response to the previous weekend. Unreal sales, biggest sales day ever. Holy, I can't say it. Absolutely incredible. Crazy. Never seen anything like it. Holy guacamole. That came out of Ohio, a friend of mine. Busiest spring weekend since we opened in 1979. Our average sale is almost double from last year. We surpassed all records by far. Every day is a Saturday. That's one to remember right there. Screaming busy. This is absolutely crazy. So that's real world. It's not data, but it's real world results of how things have been going this spring. And it's sort of all those factors that I told you about, that really seems to have people wanting to get out to garden centers. I interviewed, well, let me get into this really quick. What is hot right now? Well, veggies and herbs. I mentioned, I showed you a picture of a big vegetable display at a local garden center. I shot that specifically for GrowerTalks. Everybody there in masks, social distancing mostly, and shopping like crazy. Just this past week, 2 days ago, I talked to Mike Sutterer, who is the president and CEO of Bonnie Plants. Bonnie has 80 greenhouses in 41 states, and they sell to 49 states. They cover the garden center business better than everybody else combined in the vegetable world. And Mike told me that they've been surveying their customers since the end of March. And actually, this information I'm giving you is brand fresh. It hadn't been published anywhere, not even in Acres Online. So you're getting the scoop. He said that according to their survey, like an in-depth, careful survey of customers, they estimate 16 million new vegetable gardeners this spring. 16 million. And he says, sales-wise, he wouldn't give any numbers, but he said they've seen 5 years worth of increase in this one season. So that's how Bonnie Plant, and you go into Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, Ace, loads and loads of places anywhere in except in Hawaii, and you'll see their stuff. So that's real. And the garden center I showed you the picture of with the folks shopping in masks, he is up 400%. So that's a pretty good increase right there as well. So that's what's going on now. Along with veggies and herbs, fruit trees, shrubs, anything else edible is popular, and also more sort of big landscape project materials, bigger shrubs. I think for people looking around their garden saying, we could use a hedge here. Let's put in a bed we've been talking about. There's not much else to do. You can't, all that time you used to spend on the weekend or during the week taking kids to and from practice or going shopping or going out to eat or what have you. Can't do that yet. And so our industry has been sort of uniquely positioned to benefit, with a few exceptions. Pennsylvania, I think, is maybe still having some challenges getting garden centers opened. A few other areas, Ontario is just opening up right now. They were locked down pretty hard. So it's been a shame to see garden centers not being able to take advantage of this boom that we've been having right now. So really there are a lot of challenges to operating in this climate, and the businesses, this applies to growers, landscapers, retailers, pretty much everybody. The challenge is how effectively you can provide a safe environment for your customers and for your workers. And most of the garden centers I've been to have done a really good job very quickly of providing traffic flow, of managing cart sanitation, increasing the number of registers to spread things out. You got to get a little bit regressive with your signage, as it's sometimes called. Now, maybe you could be a little friendlier than "no children or dogs." They may leave that sign up all the time, some garden center owners. But but it's a shame. One of my editors went to a garden center with his daughter, who's 11 or 12, and a nice kid, very well behaved, and they wouldn't let her in. So he left. He was there to shop with his daughter, to shop for their vegetables. So maybe it was a little bit of a shame that was the rule. Some other garden center got the business. So I think that if you're in business right now and you're taking care of customers, you have an opportunity, unique opportunity to either really impress those customers or really, pardon my French, piss them off. And maybe you've had some experience at a retailer where they made it so difficult to get inside and shop with the rules and regulations that everybody's got to deal with, that you just like, I don't want to go back. I'm not even going to buy your online stuff. I'll deal with somebody else. And certainly online and curbside pickup is a thing. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well here. How am I doing on my time? Still, better tighten it up here. But, providing good checkout lines like that, This is all new stuff that Chris Pesci popped up in over a 10-day period. The screens, the signage, the floor markings, the 6-foot spacing things. Fascinatingly, he said, and well, actually one of the cashiers told me, this system works so much more smoothly than their old system, they're going to keep it. Maybe minus some of the signs and screens and stuff, but the traffic flow they invented for getting people in and out more smoothly and more on a more spacious basis has worked really well. So it's been a plus for them. This is what some growers are having to do as well: social distancing, barricades, but on a transplant line, sanitation, face masks. Fewer people working in certain areas. So this is all things that everybody has had to do. And I think these are things that are going to kind of be with us for a while. Now, will this last? That's one of the keys. I mean, it's booming right now. I'm starting to get the sales results in for this past weekend. They're still really strong in most areas. Where they aren't strong is where the weather has been bad. So far, I'm still hearing that every day is a Saturday. This is not slowing down yet. And the loosening of restrictions nationwide is happening, but it's kind of happening slowly, more slowly in certain areas where restaurants are, not yet open or only open, for half the number of people. Consumers are still scared. There's still fear out there about, I don't think I want to go to a movie. There's certainly going to be no sports games to go to. So gardening is still going to be one of those things that's safe and easy, and you can do it around your own home. So I think it's still going to stay strong with every day being a Saturday. But that competition is coming back, and people are going to be ready to go out to eat, ready to go to the movies, ready to go to the mall, and we'll see that happening. So take advantage of it while we can. But one other factor that's interesting that everybody has told me is that weather has not been as much as a factor as it might normally be. So if it's kind of rainy or drizzly or cold, people are still shopping in the garden centers. That's how desperately they want our product right now. Whereas in a normal season, they'd say, we'll go next time. But I think they're afraid there will be no more tomatoes if they wait till next time. That's not to say that weather is not still our biggest enemy. And where I've gotten scores from this past weekend that are low scores, it's because it was cold and rainy, which is a shame on Mother's Day. But even here in Chicagoland, it was perfect on Friday and Saturday, and it was cold and drizzly on Sunday, and that's going to drop the scores and drop the shopping. Now, one of the things I think will be very helpful for everyone out there is to make sure all these 16 million new vegetable gardeners are successful. I've heard stories that people are buying flats of tomatoes, like 36 plants or something like that. Flats of chives, for Pete's sake, when you need 4 tomato plants and 1 pack of chives. So there's going to be a lot of produce out there. So getting their garden through the summer, through the drought and the heat in Florida, then what do you do with all the produce you've grown? That's going to be a way to help people be successful. One of the things Bonnie is doing is they're partnering with a food bank organization to help set up consumers to donate their excess produce to local food banks. So maybe that's something you guys can work on as well. I think that's a really good idea as well. Now, what about post-pandemic? This whole mask and sanitation and social distancing is going to be with us for quite a while. I think I don't see it going away anytime soon. Certainly, I'm 45 miles from Chicago, which is not a hotbed anymore, but it's still much more likely to be one. So maybe I'll be in a tighter lockdown than folks out in the burbs or the rural areas will be, or in states that don't have the giant population like a Chicago or a New York City. But it's going to be there. So really work to fine tune it. Don't just deal with it or suck it up thinking, man, maybe in a month or two we can give this up. Figure it out. We could be doing this for 6 months or a year. You don't know. So fine tune it. Make sure your employees are comfortable and having fun. And make sure that your customers are able to get in and out of your business or deal with your landscape business or whatever it is as easily and smoothly as possible. Make it. And you got to remember, tensions are high right now. People are getting frustrated. They're showing up on courthouse steps with AR-15s. You don't want them on your step that way. So really be extra patient with your customers, because they're under a lot of stress, just like you are. Help them have a good experience with your business, whatever your business may be. This has been very interesting to see that those businesses who've been able to set up online sales and curbside pickup have done very well, and customers are now spoiled by this. Probably some of you are. I know plenty of people who now are like, I'm getting my groceries by Peapod all the time now, or doing I'm just phoning it in or emailing it in or whatever, and then just driving and picking it up. I'm not going in the store again, especially with all those sick people in there. So, in fact, I heard from a Swiss retailer, a friend of mine who years ago thought about doing an online business, said, no, I'm not going to invest in it. It's too expensive. And then suddenly in this pandemic, the only way to sell in Switzerland was online, and he wasn't prepared for it. So he had to cobble something together, and he realized an online selling system is not a luxury. It could be a necessity. So think about that as well. And as I say, it could be protection against the next disaster. Next time something big happens, and of course, Floridians are used to disasters with hurricanes and things, but having alternative sales channels and distribution channels could be handy. So think about that. And one other thing is think about being diversified. If you have all your eggs in one basket and that basket comes down with a virus, you could be in trouble. Somebody told me they know a business that only does fundraisers for Easter and Mother's Day. That's like 95% of their business. Well, that all kind of went away. So that's a tough position to be on. Lastly, I'm wrapping up, Bob. Don't worry. Consumers still want 4 things. And think about it. You are consumers. This is what you and everyone wants. They want convenience. They want to get what they want and kind of get in and out with as few problems as possible. And that's why the rise in online sales. What could be easier, right? But conversely, they want experience. It's not just, they don't want to buy everything on Amazon. There's times you want to go to a store and browse and get entertained and learn things and get some sights and smells. And that's where our product really comes in. They want that experience. They want inspiration. Something that, you can find online through Pinterest and places like that. But there's nothing like getting it in the flesh, so to speak. And they want to be successful. They want help translating that inspiration into a success out in their own yard. So those are all things that we can do for them, regardless, in spite of the pandemic. In fact, maybe more so with all these new gardeners coming out. Those are the 4 things that folks want. Lastly, I always wrap up here. As I said, you guys are uniquely positioned to have dealt with a pandemic. A virus is a little tiny thing, right? It's like that big. It's small. You guys are used to dealing with things like this, wiping you out, and you have to rebuild or go without sales for a couple of months. So my Floridians, my people, are uniquely prepared to deal with a disaster like this, and I'm proud of you for doing it. And finally, agricultural folks, which we all are, we can joke about disasters. And this is a sign from Vermont that somebody sent me that I really appreciated. So what would it be for Florida? I don't know. A small alligator, perhaps. So anyway, have fun with that. And Bob, that's all I've got. Don't know if we have time for questions or not, or if any have come in through the chat area, but
we do. Chris, thank you very much. Now, viewers, on the right side of your screen, we see settings, attendees, and chat. We have over 100 people viewing this right now, so sorry we can't open up the microphones to listen to you. But if you have any questions or comments about our presenter or the program, feel free to enter any information on the right, and we'll read those and respond to those. Also, Chris, could you include a web address or an email address on there? Okay, you have 66,000 people on your list right now, but let's
give her who's counting, yeah.
So if people are not receiving the email now, that they would probably appreciate that.
Right. I should have put a last slide up, but if you go to GrowerTalks.com, you can find my newsletter. Go to the little thing that looks like a hamburger. They call that a hamburger, that little menu bar, and click on it. Click on newsletters, and mine is called Acres Online. There's 8 others, I think, that are really good with some really knowledgeable, experienced. 2 of them are PhDs, for Pete's sake. Newsletter editors provide great insights. And as a sort of as a preview of what's coming next on the agenda. New variety information. You're going to get a bunch of it here, and what you're going to hear here and some more you can find at our website, springtrials.com. Just go to springtrials.com. There's a link to the coverage that we did of the non-existent spring trials. They didn't happen, but we made them happen anyway. And I talked to most of the people you're going to be talking to later on here about their new varieties. And so if you want to know what should I be growing next year, at least in the world of annuals and perennials, go to springtrials.com and you can click on the link to our 7 days of newsletter coverage, and also all the videos that we produced in conjunction with the breeding companies to show you as much of the new stuff as we possibly could. I don't think you're going to find that anyplace else.
Very good. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. My 19-year-old son is not on Facebook, and he does not shop in garden centers. But when I go to Facebook, by all means, it is jam-packed with newbies. Just recently, wherever you are, invariably there's a regional gardening group on Facebook and other social media, and is packed with the first line is, "I'm new at this, and here's a photograph of my beans. What's wrong with this?" And those of us who sell plants, by all means, every time you sell a plant is an invitation to a relationship. As soon as you plant out the beans or the trees or the shrubs, troubles happen. It's just natural. And when people need information, often they go to the internet and it's overload. Sometimes they get weird advice. So if you are in a garden center, nursery, landscaper, you need to be on social media and link to some of these groups so they get current, correct information, and let them know, okay, there is value in using coffee grounds and eggshells in fertilizing, but your beans and your peas may need something else. So yeah, by all means, we need to be connected to all these newbies so we can give them current, correct information.
I hope the newbies are not being sold, and don't take this the wrong way, but I hope they're not being sold heirloom varieties and an all organic plan. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but really they should be being sold a big pot with good potting soil in it and a cherry tomato. That's how they're going to be successful.
And
you move on to the heirlooms next year.
So we have time for one quick question, and one of the questions for Chris was, how is color selling according to your retail surveys? Can you share?
From somebody named Linda. I wonder who that is. Yeah. But no, actually, everything is selling. There is, yes, vegetables are selling extra hot, but there is not a category that isn't selling right now. Garden centers, one wrote that they gave this last weekend a 9. They would have given it a 10, but they ran out of product. They're just, and now they're worried that their growers are going to run out of product. And there was a short window, there's about a 2-week window where growers back in kind of late March were thinking, we're going to cut back a little bit because this looks bad. And then I think a week later, they're scrambling to place orders with Ball and all their brokers out there because they realize, wait a minute, this is not going to be bad. So I think we're going to see shortages this year. But as far as I could tell, everything is selling.
Good.
We have a local grower who specializes in Florida native plants. They do a fantastic job. But one day, 3 customers in a row came in and asked, where are your fruit trees? Well, they had enough room to add those to it. So they're definitely responding to the market you're talking about. Is they specialize, but if the market asks for something, they brought it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not easy. I'm not saying there aren't parts of the country that have had it tougher than others, whether it's weather, just the market someone happens to be selling to. So I don't want to imply that every grower and every retailer is sending me 10s out there. I wish it were that good, but then again, it's never like that. There's always parts of the country that just get inundated with rain all through the key weekends of May, and they have to move on and go till next year. And I think things are going to be just like that. But it sure is better than it looked like it was going to be 6 weeks ago. That's the bottom line, I think.